Hey, how the heck are you? I'm Don. It's late. I'm up. Hi. As it was once said, it's been a long time. I shouldn't have left you without some dope commentaries to nap to. So I thought tonight we'd watch Reservoir Dogs. It's 2:47 my time, which means this will wrap up roughly around 4:20 a.m. Shout out to my friends in the East Coast and every other place where they're going to be asleep right now. For some reason, I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight, so I figured I would hang out and watch one of my favorite movies, back to my comfort food series. Since it is so late, that's why I'm keeping my tone down a little bit. I'm not usually projecting the way I do, so I feel kind of weird. I gotta quit shaking this desk though. Sorry, I'll work on that. Um, So yeah, this is me watching 1992's Reservoir Dogs, probably completely alone. It'll be a good time. Oh, hey, Patrick, nice to see you, buddy. Um, our friend Patrick from Have Cheetah Will Viewed dropped by to say hello. He was with me previously over on Echo Ciro's channel. He was watching Pooh, Blood and Honey. So that was a fun time. If you're not familiar with that film, or if you have seen it, you want to watch it with some fun people, I recommend checking out Echo's channel. It was a lively chat. I was in there. I had all sorts of poo puns, as Professor Macabro called them, or should I say Poo-fessor Macabro. Anyways, yeah, if I want to get this thing wrapped up around 4:20 like the plan is, then I'm going to go ahead and press play. It's currently playing on Tubi. So there's a lot to talk about tonight, but luckily this is a movie I could talk about endlessly. I've seen it so many times. I've watched documentaries about it. I think there was even maybe a commentary for this. I don't remember. But in general, it's one of my favorite movies. I'm a big Tarantino nerd, so this one I can talk about in my sleep. And there's a chance that might happen at some point, so we'll see. But it's currently playing on Tubi. Today is the last day it's going to be on Tubi. So if you're trying to watch along later, I don't know what it's going to be when you watch it. So shout out to the podcast crew and the replay crew. I apologize. I was distracted. I see our friend Patrick says he's having a hard time sleeping as well. Yeah, a lot going on with our community of friends. I'll probably get into that at some point while we're watching during a lull or something. But I see my friend Matt is here, Pugwall316, frequent cohort and collaborator. I love me some Matt. Pugwall's the guy. So it's nice of him to join us. I thought specifically that even though this was such a late stream, I was like, you know what? Some of my UK peeps are going to be waking up. So I'd be into that. So I'm glad Matt's here. I thank you. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start this up. Like I said, it's playing on Tubi and it expires today. So when you're watching this later, I have no idea where you'll be watching it. But let's go ahead and get it muted and all that. Oh, of course, they're going to start me with an ad. You know how they do, bro. There we go. Put that part of it. Man, they're hitting me with the long commercial. It started, and then I pressed pause and rewound it to the beginning and paused it right on the dead start. And when I pressed play, they hit me with a 60-second commercial. It's like, you bastards. This movie I have multiple copies of on home media, physical media. All right, there, it's finally starting. Jeez, way to make me vamp. Live America Inc. presents. So let's see, let's get the captions up so I can, let me tell you about what Like a Virgin's about. It's all about a girl who digs a guy with a big dick. What a great way to start a movie, huh? Get grandma, kid. We're going to learn about what Like a Virgin's about. I really love this opening scene. If you're familiar with Q, the winged serpent, that's a pretty cool monster movie with this like really weird sort of crime drama, like, loser tries to get his life in order subplot. It's Michael Moriarty, really good. But that movie starts off with this same scene. It's a bunch of people meeting for the first time, all in black suits. They're all getting ready to pull off a heist together. So that's the same thing with this. It's like a little mini tribute to Q, the winged serpent. Let's see. We got some other people popping in here and saying hello. Yeah, some folks in here will, yeah, I'm hoping Gareth pops in. This is usually around his wake up time within the next hour or so. Cinephile Sanity, Sean, welcome, my friend. Good evening. Some of you as peeps just don't know what sleep is. Thank you, Sean. I'm glad to see you here, buddy. Let's see here. Tipping is not a place in China. There you go. Watching baseball highlights. Um, yeah, one of the main reasons I was thinking about watching this is I've been on this kind of comfort food kick where I've been watching all my favorite movies and just sort of using them to help me get past the spring or out of the winter and into the spring. You know, you get those like end days of spring or of winter where everything's just dark and gray and rainy a lot. And I don't know, my favorite movies have been comforting me through the gray days as we hope the sun eventually shows back up. So this is one of my faves of all time. As I was saying a few minutes ago, I own this on, I think I had the regular edition DVD. And then later on, I bought each one of those DVDs that were color coded. So there was like a Mr. Pink with Buscemi on the front, and there was a yellow with Mr. Blonde, and there was a white package with a Mr. White, obviously. So, but I believe they made 4 of them, and I collected all 4. I bought Mr. Pink on my own because I had to have that one, and then I found the other 3 at various like resale shops and built my collection out. But the dope one I have that I love so much, it's a metal gas can that says Reservoir Dogs, and you take the top off it and you pull out a pack of matches that say Jackrabbit Slims, and then you open it up and the discs are inside the matches, but like it's a little matchbook or whatever. So yeah, that set is kind of amazing. It comes with all sorts of like a little booklet with the making of and stuff. I believe they maybe made the same thing for Blu-ray. I don't know if they did or not, but it's one of the better special edition sets I've seen. Let's see. Yeah, folks just saying hi to each other. Yeah, today's kind of a weird day. One of our friends in the community is struggling with his health very badly. A lot of people on other channels are talking about it. Our friend Dave from Savage Zombie Reviews. If you would please keep him in your well wishes and your thoughts, and his family especially, and his friends. I know a lot of people in general are hurting in a lot of places. So I appreciate you being here with me. Like I say, I'm having trouble sleeping myself. I normally have trouble sleeping, but when my mind's racing with a million thoughts in a million directions, it's extra hard. So, yeah, I thought I would check out this 360 shot around the table where they cut behind the people and you can see like fleeting glimpses. It's like classic Tarantino. It's something he must have picked up from some other movie, but you're still trying to figure these folks out. So you don't really get a good look at them. The way the camera pans and cuts behind people's heads and you see someone's face for a second. But it's a good way to introduce the characters and be like, who are these folks? What are they about? Oh, hello. Mayanne dropped by. She says, I got to go to bed, but I'd come say hi and good night. Thank you so much, man. We appreciate it. Yeah, Mayanne was with us on Echo Zero's pod about our stream he just had before this, where he was talking about Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. So those of you who are fans of Mayanne, be sure to check out that stream. She was in the chat with us, just lighting it up. Let's see here. I did a script writing comp back in the day, when this came out, and on the BBC Channel 4, and they sent me Reservoir script paper, of course, as the layout to follow. Interesting. Yeah, when I was trying to write a screenplay, the first thing I did was write a bunch of books about how to write screenplay and story structure and plot points and how to like pace out a story 1 minute per page, a beat of whatever genre it is every 10 pages, et cetera, et cetera. And then after that, I went and got a bunch of screenplays and read them so I could figure out, look at them on page and get accustomed to thinking in that type of structure. And Reservoir Dogs was one I read. Dogma was one I read. The Sixth Sense. And then the screenplay for Superman Lives, the Kevin Smith movie that they never made with Nicolas Cage as Superman. I read the script for that. It was pretty interesting. I believe they wanted either Chris Rock or Will Smith to be Jimmy Olsen in that. Like, that's how old that story was. One of the main reasons I was thinking about watching Reservoir Dogs in particular is going on right now in front of my eyes. The other day I went to Subway. So for those of you who aren't Americans, I don't know if you have Subway there or not. It's a sub sandwich shop. You make a big sandwich and you buy it, whatever, $10 or whatever the hell it is. So I get my sandwiches from Subway, and when I go to pay with my card, there's a little thing to like tip the person for Subway. And it reminded me of like a coffee shop. Like I don't dig tipping people at coffee shops either. It's like, well, sometimes if you get the big ridiculous whatever coffee, but I mean, just make my sub. Why did all of a sudden that require a tip? And I felt myself becoming Buscemi. Like in general, I'm a real like a decent tipper. I usually tip at least 20%, even if the service is bad, because I've worked tip jobs before and they suck. But like this whole argument here where he's like, the people at McDonald's serve you stuff and you don't feel the need to tip them. It's like, that's basically this Subway thing. You know what I mean? So I found myself becoming an old man and turning into Steve Buscemi before my own eyes. Let's see what's going on with the chat here. Let's see here. Yeah, the reason I'm not sleeping inhaled it. Yeah, we all have a lot on our minds, Matt. That's why I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you being here with me, buddy, and keeping me company. One of the things I was thinking about was, with Dave getting sick and all that's happened around that, one of the memories I have, I hadn't been on Facebook in a long time, and I logged in, and he had messaged me how much he enjoyed being in that Don Zombie video. He just got a big kick out of it. And he posted it to his Facebook page and shared it out and stuff. So it really kind of touched me. But one of the last things I remember with Dave being in front of us was him watching Street Trash with Matt and Larry, my friend, the horror cat dad. And he was just talking about like how much he hated that movie. And he was joking that he wasn't even watching Street Trash. He was watching some other movie. I don't remember what it was, Fantasia or something. He was making a joke. So, yeah, I don't know. The man just has an incredibly infectious laugh, and it's fun to spend time with him. So a lot of us are hurting right now and have a lot on our mind associated with all of that. So here's the famous shot. This the guy's leaving the diner and walking down the back alley behind the diner, and it's all in slow motion, and they're playing Little Green Bag, and there's cutting to each person, and they give them their individual credit hero shot. It's kind of an iconic scene, even though it's incredibly cheap and B movie-ish. It looks like something from a Jack Hill 1970s movie or whatever. Let's see here. What was I? Oh, Cinephile Sanity says, Pooh Bear, what's next? Attack the Killer Cheerios? Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. How far is Cheerios into falling into the public domain? I love all you crazy kids. Remember that. We love you too, man. And I appreciate everybody here. Wow, 6 of you now at this time of night. You kids need to go to bed. Why are you watching my silly ass? But I appreciate you being here so much. Like I said, I'm gonna be awake for a while. So rather than just sit here and stare at a TV and not pay attention to a new movie and then be like, "What did I watch?" I figured I'd rely on the comforting bosom of Reservoir Dogs. A guy gets his ear cut off. It's a family film. Okay, see you all later. Good night. I guess they send us ones with lots of dialogue in it that suits both of us. That's a good idea. Yeah, for the screenwriting stuff. Love you too, man. I don't tip Subway. Exactly, Patrick. That's what I'm saying. And I felt like a dick as soon as it hit me, but I'm like, that's absurd. And then I was like, well, I guess you tip the barista, and that's kind of the same amount of work. But yeah, I mean, if they started making us tip the people at McDonald's, I wouldn't be shocked. It feels like another way that corporations are going to figure out a way to screw both the employee and the customer. So then right after the slow-mo scene, we cut to this like action scene where, well, not action, but Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth in the car, and Tim Roth is bleeding from the stomach really bad, and the interior of the car is all white. So of course blood is just everywhere on the ceiling and the windows, and you're kind of struck of like, what did we miss? And that's sort of the joke of the film. It's a movie about a diamond heist where we don't ever see the heist. And that was part of Tarantino's idea, From what I understand, the plot of the diamond heist in this movie that we don't see and they talk about takes place in City on Fire, I believe it's called. Is that a Japanese movie? I don't know. An Asian movie. I'm racist. Sorry. But I had the VHS of it, City on Fire, but I never got around to watching it. I kind of just had it because I was a Tarantino nerd and wanted that VHS. Yeah, you mentioned that video so much. Yeah. That the fact that he dug that because he didn't know he was in it, and he missed the Don Zombie thing when it first came out in October. And, he and I were just sort of peripherally friends from Gareth's channel. If you'd like to learn more about our friend Dave, who we're talking about, a great place to find him and the stuff that he did is not only his channel, but with our friend Gareth from Video Tasties. They did a bunch of watch-alongs. I believe Double Impact with Jean-Claude Van Damme is like Gareth's top-rated video or whatever. I believe that's what it is. But we were just sort of friendly from his channel, and he was often in the chat and everything. So that's where I became buddies with him. And he didn't know he was in that video, and somebody showed it to him, and he got such a kick out of being in with everybody else. I was like, of course, Dave, I wouldn't leave you out. You're the guy. As they say in this movie, he looks like the fucking thing. He's just muscles and bald head. And so, yeah, he's the man. Street trash, shaking my head. Exactly, Patrick. That was Dave's attitude. I'll probably butcher this story, but as I recall, the story was that Dave did a review of Street Trash on his channel, and then within the comments of that video, there was somebody who was arguing with him really heavily and sort of knowledgeably about Street Trash, and he realized, I think it was one of the producers, maybe something like that. And Matt's in the chat; he can fill in the gaps on that. But just this, you could see Dave's delight in irritating this man. Like, it was so great. I was like, yeah, not much going on here tonight in this stream popping up. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Sean. Stay away from my comforting bosom. I will be all up in your comforting bosom, Matt. Yeah, this late at night, I usually don't start. If it's past 2, I generally will be like, well, it's a little too late for anybody to join tonight. But on a Friday, I just figured with all that's going on, and I'd rather hang out with my friends than sit alone, So I appreciate Sean, Matt, Patrick, Mayanne for popping in. I appreciate you guys so much. So here, Tim Roth is laying on the floor in the garage, and well, actually, I believe this is a warehouse for a funeral home, and there's like caskets in the background. But we'll get to all that as this story moves on. But he's laying on the floor in this loading dock area, and Harvey Keitel's like comforting him like a son, and he's combing his hair and just like holding his hand and letting him know you're not going to die. And you see that these two, even though we learned already they don't know each other, that they have some sort of bond. At some point during the planning, they became pals. Yeah, producer, actor. Oh, I didn't realize it was one of the actors in the movie too. Oh, wow. So it was yeah, and Dave's happiness was like, well, your movie sucks, so what do you want? Mikey's Morgan, I'm Mr. Black. Mikey, you can't be Mr. Black, because what happens is everybody wants to be Mr. Black, and then everybody starts arguing about it. How about if you're Mr. Pink? Are you Mr. Pink, Mikey? No, that's another great line in this movie, just the thought of the giving thought to what the characters would think about the situation. The whole thing with Mr. Blonde, Mr. Pink, Mr. White, all that's taken from Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Man, that was difficult. Jesus, where's a beer? That's taken from the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, the original one with Hector Elizondo, I think is in it. I don't remember. But in there, all the people in the subway heist, actually it's a heist and they end up on the subway. But in that whole thing, everybody's Mr. Blonde, Mr. White, Mr. Pink, whatever. So that's where he got that from. So he's guilty of stealing, as a lot of people say, but all directors are. Like you learn from things that you see, and then you mimic them, whether you realize it or not. You kind of can't help being derivative. Your brain just sort of absorbs stuff and thinks that's cool, and you might not even really register it, but it lives in your subconscious till it's time to like shoot the scene, and then it just comes out like some other scene. Let's see here. Mikey says, hey, Don, and everybody in the chat. Tim Roth is a solid actor. Yeah, he's a very good actor. I don't know if you ever saw 4 Rooms. I might have to watch that one night. When I was on the kick of watching movies that pertain to me staying in a hotel, I thought about watching 4 Rooms, but I could only find it on Pluto. And I was like, I don't know if anybody else is going to be able to find that. I was going to do a stream Sunday with Gareth and Al for Hellraiser Hellworld, but I just can't help. I'm hoping to kind of get back to it soon. Yeah, I totally understand, Matt. We canceled In the House tonight. For those of you fans of In the House, there isn't a new episode this week. It's been postponed till next Friday. JT's horror discussions, longtime friend, arguably one of Dave's closest friends on the site. Him and Jim's Retro Emporium. Um, some of these fellas, they got together and did like a nice tribute, and a way to, not so much a tribute as just inform folks. And it was people that we all knew were close to Dave, and we felt trusting with the information that they would give us. So that went on roughly a little before where Into House was supposed to go in today. So it just didn't feel right to talk about, hey, did you hear there's a new Chucky movie maybe coming out? So we decided to postpone it for a week. I watched Thanksgiving finally, Eli Roth. So that's been a running theme on the show for weeks. So be sure to tune in next week and check that out. But it didn't feel right to talk about it this afternoon for sure. This evening, however, though, like I said, I was afraid I was going to be sitting alone, and a bunch of other folks were just going to be sitting alone. And especially if they're awake this time of night, I'd like to be here, just kind of giving folks a way to hang out together. And like I said, this is a movie I've seen. I could probably do 5 commentaries of this. I've missed so much just with my rambling. And of course, there's a commercial break. So looks like this is a 30-second one, but it's for some hair serum. Nice. But yeah, Matt, I totally understand not really feeling like being on screen right now. Like I say, I'm kind of the opposite. I feel like being alone would be worse for me. So I appreciate everybody being here. Let's see, where was I? Mr. Black on another job. You're Mr. Pink. No, you can't be Mr. Purple. Mr. Purple's a guy on another job. You're Mr. Pink. Why do I got to be Mr. Pink? Because you're a pussy. All right, so the commercial was done. That was a quickie. That might even have been a 15-seconder. But here's a really cool panning shot where we see the back room. Like I said, this is a mortuary or a funeral home or some sort. So they're down where they do the embalming, and you can even see like the embalming stuff in the background and the bathroom and all this. The rubber tubing and all that. Let's see here. Mikey says he'll be Pink. Of course you will, Mikey. You're a champ. And what's the line about Mr. Brown? It's been a while since I saw Reservoir Dogs. Mr. Brown sounds a little too much like Mr. Shit. Yeah, just the idea that each one of these dudes would be pissy about the name that they got feels very real. And that's one of the things Tarantino does is he fills, he makes the characters talk. And a lot of times they talk about stuff that doesn't really pertain to the plot, per se. Like all this stuff has nothing to do with stolen diamonds, you know what I mean? Or who's the rat or nothing, but it informs who these characters are. So it's almost a character study on top of a crime heist plot thing. Tarantino's very talented. He's one of the people that made me want to get into learning how to make videos and, thinking about how, you shoot a scene. And like right now we're shooting down a long hallway into a bathroom door, and we see their characters way in the back. And that's set up that way. So it feels like we're spying on them. Psychologically, we're like 3 rooms away, just kind of eavesdropping on their conversation. We're not in the room with them like you normally are. Now they cut to in the room with them. So we feel like we know them, we're in on it. Let's see here. Michael Madsen is awesome. He does B-movie horror now. I really like Michael Madsen. He's got kind of that cool, like I think if there was a style I could mimic, I would mimic. It would either be John Hamm or Michael Madsen. Like they're just some of the coolest people. I don't know. I like the way they carry themselves. Michael Madsen's like Mickey Rourke without being a lunatic. Well, he's a different kind of lunatic. Let's see here. Tarantino is a hack, but I do like Kill Bill Volume 1. Patrick, I will choke you out. I don't care how much I love you. No, I like Tarantino because he falls into the second generation of the sons of film. Sometimes I talk, all right, sons is sexist. Sorry, I should say children of film. But movies get started in like the 1900s, like the first, cameras and productions and stuff right around early 1900, a little before, and then the studio system pops up in like the 1920s and the early 30s, right? Really closer to the early 30s. They did a lot of like serials prior to then, not feature length stuff. So for the next like 20 years, a lot of these movies start turning up on TV and they're shown over and over. And a whole generation of kids grows up on movies, the first generation to grow up on movies. So then in the 70s, when film is like bereft of new ideas and everything becomes, well, the late 60s, there's a lot of experimental weirdness, but just not very good. And then into the early 70s, you get the children of film, kids who grew up on TV or grew up in the theater. And then that's where Spielberg, De Palma, Martin Scorsese, George Lucas, that whole crop, they're influenced by what they grew up on. It's the first real generation of filmmakers that had film their whole life. So Tarantino is the second generation of filmmakers. Like, he's clearly influenced by De Palma and Scorsese, and I don't know, not so much Spielberg, because Spielberg is like he's like the most competent director ever, but at times he's very vanilla. But when you look at George Lucas with American Graffiti and some of the stuff, you can see all that in here. John Carpenter was basically one of the first generation of kids who grew up on film. He's like heavily influenced by Howard Hawks. Oh, let's see here. Where were you in the chat? You mean Z-level horror, Mikey? Yes, Z-level is right. I'm glad you're doing this, Tom. Thank you, Matt. I appreciated it. Larry and I waffled back and forth about doing Into House today. I kind of wanted to, because I wanted our folks to be able to get together. Like, I think a lot of people had the same feelings I did, where they just sort of didn't know really what to do with themselves, and they kind of wanted to be with the people from our community. So when I saw JT was having that stream with so many of Dave's friends, you included, I felt like there was no real reason to do our show then. So, but middle of the night's a lonely time, as a bachelor, I know. Let's see here. Madsen is doing a new Asylum mockbuster. I was unaware. One thing to take is that everyone has a different reaction to dealing with stuff like this, and that's all okay. Yeah, I agree, my friend. Madsen is in your Misfits Friends and awful cowboy movie. I didn't know that Michael Madsen was in the Danzig cowboy movie. I gotta watch that Danzig cowboy movie. I was unaware Danzig was tiny until Kara told me. I've only seen him like in solo shots on stage and stuff. Yeah, I just really like the early Misfits, early '80s stuff. I can't help it. John Hamm did well as a Fletch. I could see you as a Fletch, John. That is the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me, Matt. Thank you. Fletch obviously was a big influence on me. Chevy Chase, when he was young and cool, was like the coolest guy. And then when he turned into a weirdo moron, he was hard to deal with. But that Fletch, that's key Chevy Chase. But I like John Hamm as Fletch also. I was surprised. He wasn't as good as Chevy Chase, but he was still pretty damn good. Let's see here. Tarantino has a lot of outbursts on fans. He's crazy. Yeah, I saw the one. There's like a famous old school clip. It was like one of the first viral clips on the internet of some dude following Tarantino around at like a Waffle House, maybe at like what's Sundance in Utah, I believe that is. And he's like, some guy's just like basically stalking him, just standing there with the camera, like, talk to me. And Tarantino's like, get the hell away from me, dude. And then eventually he starts like flexing on him and chasing him. So it's like just this crazy footage of Tarantino chasing after this fan, like, he's a pack of ducks or something. Chris Penn reminding us how good he was. Chris Penn was very good. He, obviously not as, a big a star as his brother, but as far as a character actor goes, I always liked Chris Penn. He's very good in At Close Range with Sean Penn and Christopher Walken. Don Fletch. Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. Chris Penn, Best of the Best. Oh, I forgot about Best of the Best. He's so good. What are you counting him for? Oh, I love that when he goes to break all the bricks, and then the one dude just busts like way more bricks than him. He's like, "What are you counting them for?" Yeah, Chris Penn was like this cowboy character, like this big podunk, like kickboxer. I almost feel like he's like Randall Tex Cobb a little bit. Like it, yeah. Best of the Best is awesome. Eric Roberts' ponytail is superb. One of my favorites. What lore podcast books? Ouatih. Why don't I know that? Please spell that out for me. Let's see here. I have a Misfits video coming tomorrow. Ooh, all right, Mikey. I'll have to check it out. Is it an anniversary of an album I'm not aware of or something? When I was driving. That's exactly it, Patrick. I'm sorry, Matt. I ain't no goddamn son of a bitch. like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I finally watched Thanksgiving, and Eli Roth's Thanksgiving ends with that as the closing song. So it got points for that. The Funeral as well. Great song, Matt. I Turned Into a Martian. I Turned Into a Monster. And then 20 Eyes. And I Want Your Skull is like one of my favorite. It's so messed up. Like I feel bad telling people I Want Your Skull, but it's just like, on one hand, it's like it's like a teenage boy joke or something. Like I want your skull. But on the other hand, it's like this sicko poetic sort of gothic Victorian poem where it's like, I loved you so much. I just wish I had your skull up on my mantle. It's like, oh, you're crazy. But that's kind of the Misfits aesthetic. It's like they sound like they're singing love songs or rockabilly jams, and you listen to the lyrics and you're like, this guy's talking about turning into a monster and having 20 eyes in his head. Like, great point, Patrick. I prefer Chris to Sean, more real and less showy. Look, I'm acting. Yeah, Sean Penn's very. He's part of that Sons of Brando, basically, or Children of Brando. Marlon Brando became like iconic. Like he had his early roles, The Wild Bunch and The Wild One and all that. Sorry, The Wild Bunch was a different movie. The Wild One and a bunch of other stuff, Streetcar Named Desire and a bunch of other things. And his method acting technique became so famous and like admired that just a whole generation of actors wanted to like live the role. Daniel Day-Lewis is basically following in Marlon Brando's footsteps, Let's see here. Yes, what are you counting them for? Mikey knows. Yeah, it's like the funniest scene. That one line always gets me so much. That, and then when they show the Koreans or whoever they fight, when they see my man with the eye patch and he's sitting underneath the waterfall, like meditating, and the water's beating down on him. Like that's one of the coldest kung fu movie scenes ever. Like, dude's badass. Let's see here. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I liked Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like I said, I'm a huge Tarantino fan, so at some point we'll watch all of them on this channel. But I was really kind of blown away with it. I didn't like it as much as everybody else because it was kind of the revisionist history thing that he did with Inglourious Bastards. But at the same time, it cobbles together all these different little legends of Hollywood and sort of gossipy stories and things like Bruce Lee being mean to his stuntmen and stuff like that had been talked about for years, but nobody really had the balls to put down Bruce Lee, but Tarantino gave it a try. But, yeah, I enjoyed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So that's what we're talking about. Gotcha. Yep. It's the anniversary of Walk Among Us. Ah, nice. Now, Walk Among Us is that the first one after Danzig leaves, or is that the last Danzig one? I think it has the purple cover and it's got like the big spider in the back, I think. I don't know. It's been so long since I've looked at an album cover because of like MP3s now. The only time I ever see one is like a little tiny thumbnail when it's on my iPod or whatever. I got to watch Thanksgiving too. Yeah, Patrick, I was peer pressured into it. I kind of wanted to wait until Thanksgiving time because I knew I would enjoy it more. And I also knew that I wasn't going to like it as much as everybody else because I've heard nothing but good reviews. I haven't heard one negative Thanksgiving review yet. So I'll talk about it this Friday on the show, but I didn't love it, but I certainly didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. It was a fun film. I'll go more into it later when there's time for that. I saw Thanksgiving and missed that song, like the film, but how did I miss that? No surprise. Yeah, at the very end in the credits, they do like the screen goes red and the credits are kind of cool. They're splotchy and the words pop up and you see little like the characters come up almost in cutout form. It's like I don't know, kind of a montage deal. Looks like a music video. And I Ain't No Goddamn Son of a Bitch. What is that? Where Eagles Dare, I think is what that's really called, right? Yeah, Where Eagles Dare. It's named after the old Marilyn Monroe movie. Sorry, in the movie I'm supposed to be watching and talking about, they're talking about now how they should get out of this room, and Harvey Keitel's like they're doing a slow zoom in on his face, and you can see him trying to like put all this together. Like we obviously had a rat, and who could it be? And then how he's explaining to Pink how he should go drop Mr. Orange off in front of the hospital and just abandon him there. But they're like, he also kind of wonders, it's like, well, what if this dude's the cop? You know what I mean? We'll let him out with all our information and kind of Well, I suppose they never really did say who their names are. We know Mr. White's name is Larry. Shout out to the horror cat dad. Let's see here. So yeah, right now they're just kind of talking. Oh yeah, and by the way, Larry's from Milwaukee. Shout out to Wisconsin. So shout outs galore. I'm going to listen while trying to rest. Oh, thank you, Patrick. I appreciate you hanging out. You and the cheetah get cuddled up, and I'll be sure to entertain you. Marlon Brando ballooned up nicely. Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah. That's one of the things that was funny about Marlon Brando. At a certain point, he felt like he'd accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish, and he's just like, screw it, I'm going to just start getting fat. He fell into Elvis mode. And don't we all? Thanks for doing this. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate you hanging out, Bunny. Brando's my favorite actor of all time. On the Waterfront is my top five, maybe number one movie. I haven't seen On the Waterfront in years. I remember I really enjoyed Carl Malden in it, but I think I watched that one in like some class in school, so it was one of those where everybody else is in the class head down sleeping because they don't care that there's a movie on, and there's Don's head like poked up watching it. That's how I fell in love with To Kill a Mockingbird. Same story. Everybody else fell asleep because it was black and white movie day. And, there's Don, who's normally tired in class, like wide awake. This is great. Hell yeah. Best of the Best is a great underrated fighting movie. Yeah, I enjoy Best of the Best a lot. That was, I barely remember Best of the Best 2, but Best of the Best 1, God, I've seen so many times. And their first studio album, but they actually had Static Age and 15 Hits from Hell first. Okay, got you. Yeah, because that's what I mean. I kind of like their pre-studio studio album stuff, but I don't like their early grunge stuff. Like same with Nirvana. Like I enjoy the Bleach album, but anytime you find stuff before Bleach, it's real grungy sounding, and the audio's kind of staticky, and that's how a lot of the early Misfits are. But then once they hit their stride in the early 80s, before they get that studio album, is all my favorite stuff. Why am I drawing a blank on it? Oh God, I'm drawing a blank. The one with Where Eagles Dare and all that. The one with the why am I drawing a blank? Not Evil Live. But forget it. It'll come to me in a minute. It's too late for me to be trying to remember stuff. The Midnight Woodsman, thank you for joining us. What a cool avatar you have. I believe this is one of the first times you've been with us. I appreciate you hanging out. Good morning. Let's see here. Mikey said he reviewed Thanksgiving. Didn't like it as much as most people. Yeah, there you go, Mikey. Yeah, I felt it was somewhat similar. It was a much better version of Valentine, the Denise Richards movie. Like it was kind of a very similar, just you could tell they were trying to bank on the holiday as like, well, there aren't many Thanksgiving movies, so there's a market here. I think I might like Pilgrim better. I don't know. Well, we'll see. Well, I'll have to mull it around. So now here they're doing something I talk about in film all the time. Every shot of Steve Buscemi and Harvey Keitel up to this point, they're on opposite shots. So we'll cut to Harvey Keitel, we'll cut to Keitel, and then we cut to Buscemi, then we cut to Keitel, then we cut to Buscemi. Now Mr. Blonde shows up. Like these two are fighting and they pull the guns on each other, and it's the famous scene from the cover of the box where Buscemi's laying down, pointing the gun up and everything. So Mr. Blonde shows up and he's leaning against the wall and he's got his drink. He's drinking a soda. You can tell he's been like to a fast food place and stuff. And now Buscemi and Keitel are in the same shot because they're aligned. So we see these three guys all in one shot, and we see Mr. Blonde separated from them in a different shot. So psychologically, we know they're not together, as opposed to these guys who are all simpatico. I mentioned they do that a lot in romances. They'll have the two characters that are going to fall in love be in separate shots, and then they'll be in the same shot, but in different parts of the screen. And then the next time we see them, they'll be closer, and then there'll be a tight close up on them. So we almost feel like we can feel their love growing. There's so much psychology in the shots you pick and what you cut to when you edit, but it's all subliminal. You would never think about it unless you kind of had it revealed to you. Are you going to bark all day, little doggy? Are you going to bite? What was that? I'm sorry. I didn't catch it. Would you repeat it? I love that shit. I love that shit so much. And then he does repeat it. Are you going to bark all day, little doggy? Are you going to bite? And then this whole part where Steve Buscemi breaks them up from fighting and Madsen's laughing. You can tell he loves the juice. He likes to get amped up and feel that like anger you get in your soul before a fight. And he's giggling about it. Ooh, that was scary. So good. So good. Such a good movie. Well, I got to do work for 1 hour. I'll take Marcy out and wake myself up. By the way, I'm probably in my late Brando stage. Sending love to all and take care, Don. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt. You're the man. Rub Marcy's head and give her a boop on her nose for me. She's the coolest. Midnight. Mikey, Midnight, Patrick. Yeah. Later, Matt. Imagine wandering into McDonald's and casually ordering a milkshake and you just pulled a heist and shot people. Yeah, I love that. And he's like, well, I see you got the drink. Did you get the fries too? And he's like, oh, I ate them. You know. And then he's like, he tells him, he's like, Michael Madsen tells Harvey Keitel, I bet you're a big Lee Marvin fan, aren't you? Like, you think you're a good guy, hero, tough guy. And then that's also like a comment about his age too, a little bit. And he's like, yeah, me too. I love that guy. So here, Mr. Blonde reveals that some of the dudes have been shot. I think Mr. Blue is gone. And when we cut to Mr. Blonde, you can see there's three like rectangles, monolith looking things, and they're wrapped up in brown paper. And after he reveals that Mr. Blue, the guy played by Eddie Bunker, we'll get to him later, the guy played by him, he's dead. So now we see one of the, it's a coffin that's been unwrapped. And every time one of the characters dies in the movie, they unwrap a coffin. So when we start off, the warehouse is empty, but by the end of the film, you know, there's going to be all these various coffins around the room, but it's all subliminal. Another damn commercial for the UPS store, but it was a quickie, 15-seconder, not bad. So here's the part where Mr. Blonde takes Mr. Pink and Mr. White. What is Harvey Keitel? White, yeah. And they open up the trunk and we see the cop in the trunk, but we see the first shot of one of Tarantino's famous shots where he opens the hood and looks down into the camera. Like you basically get in the trunk with a camera and they open the trunk on you and, you know, you see POV in trunk. They use the same shot when the guys open the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. It's kind of a signature shot of Tarantino's. And the way they do it's just really funny where we see them and they start laughing and we're not quite sure what they see. And then they reveal it's a cop in the trunk. Marvin Nash. And then as they pull the cop out, they cut to the Mr. Blonde title card and we go to his story. And we learn that, you know, his connection with the nice guy Eddie and Joe Cabot. Oh, let's see here. Steelers wheel playing, exactly. I struggle to picture Mr. Blue even doing the stick up. Yeah, this is a perfect time to talk about him when we got a minute. Mr. Blue is this guy, Eddie Bunker. He's a real life heist guy. I believe he was like a criminal. I'm trying to remember, like, yeah, I think it was armed robbery and stuff. I don't remember what his total criminal background was, but he did time in prison and he wrote a book about his life story and how he reformed in prison and all this stuff. And then I think he became like just a character actor that turned up and stuff. And Tarantino wanted to have someone who actually was a real criminal intermingled with this cast. You know, they're all a bunch of actors. So if we could have one guy who has real criminal bona fides. So that's why Eddie Bunker is in this. He's really just there to elevate the amount of wanted level on Grand Theft Auto terms. You know, he adds another star to their wanted level. Yeah, so here we see Michael Madsen. He's just fresh out of prison, and he's, you know, telling him, like, we learn his backstory. He went to jail covering up for Joe Cabot and his son. So that's why we know that they trust him, because he went and did a long prison bid for him. So later on, when they try to blame all this on him, they're like, man, that dude was in jail for us for years, and he could have peeped. And now all of a sudden he's going to, you know, turn on us? Not a chance. And this is funny. We see right away when Chris Penn comes in, he gives him a hug, and the two of them start wrestling around in the office. Like you get that they're, like high school buddies or something. Like they go way back to a time when, because dudes like this, they're too old to be wrestling around like kids, but they probably have a past of it. And we're doing the shot that I mentioned before. The camera is sitting outside of Joe Cabot's office, and we're shooting through the doorway. So psychologically, we're spying on the conversation. We could easily the camera could be over Joe Cabot's shoulder or something, but we just leave it on this static shot like we're spying on what they're talking about. When Robert Rodriguez directed From Dusk Till Dawn, he copied a lot of Tarantino's shots because he wanted that to look like a Tarantino movie. So they use this type of shot, shooting through doors from another room, a lot in From Dusk Till Dawn. Yeah, I think they started wrestling, and they were supposed to Tarantino was supposed to call cut, and he kind of let them wrestle around a little bit and kind of knock over the chair and all that. So, a lot of directors do that trick. They get their actors going, and then they just don't ever call cut and see where they take it on their own, Yeah, this is just a fantastic movie. When Tarantino, apparently he originally wrote True Romance. Or no, I'm sorry. He wrote Reservoir Dogs first, I think, and then he wrote True Romance. And he tried to direct this movie, My Best Friend's Birthday. And he shot it in black and white, and he wanted to do it real, like low budget. And he was renting a 16 millimeter camera like each weekend from the camera place and then bringing it back on Monday. And he didn't have the money to get the film developed. So by the time he finally had enough money to get the film developed and kind of cobble it together and edit it and make it into a movie, he realized he sucked as a director. And I think a lot of us do that. They think, we think the first thing we're going to try to shoot, we're going to be good at, or it's going to turn out well. And you realize how terrible you are. And then it's like, okay, well, I got to get better at this. Okay, now it sucks because of this. And I got to get better at that. So My Best Friend's Birthday was his first foray into acting and directing, acting, all of it. You can find that on YouTube. I found it a long time ago when YouTube first started. It's like in, I don't know, 4 parts or 2 parts or something. But it's kind of interesting. You can see Tarantino's early dialogue at work and all of that. But he also had written Natural Born Killers, and that was purchased by Oliver Stone. And when they made Natural Born Killers, Tarantino got the writing credit attached to it. And he was furious. He said it didn't look like the movie he wanted at all. Like he thought, Natural Born Killers would play like a Tarantino movie. And instead it plays like an Oliver Stone movie, like a crazy drugged out, surrealistic, everything, music video style almost. So one time, I guess Tarantino was in a Hollywood restaurant of some sort, and he saw the producer of Natural Born Killers and went over and got into an argument, and it resulted in a fist fight. And Tarantino apparently punched the guy who was the executive producer on Natural Born Killers. And he's frequently disavowed that movie. Like he doesn't think that looks like anything like his work. They changed too much of it. But he also had written True Romance. And Tony Scott got a hold of True Romance and Reservoir Dogs. And he wanted to direct Reservoir Dogs. And Tarantino told him, no, that one's for me. That's going to be my first, motion picture. But I'll sell you True Romance and you can make that. And the original screenplay for True Romance was very much in Tarantino style. It jumped around in time and, it would start at one point and then go to the end and then kind of jump to the middle and, bounce around. But when Tony Scott got a hold of it and rewrote it, it was more linear, So after True Romance and Natural Born Killers, which didn't come out till after Tarantino was big, he was known as one of these great writers. So he eventually found Harvey Weinstein and the Weinstein Company's Miramax, and they bought into funding this movie. I believe the primary person, Harvey Keitel, wanted to make this movie. So they made it for him. And then they let Tarantino direct, even though he had he shouldn't have been at that stature yet. He hadn't earned that right. But this movie was such a success, primarily in the film festival circuit, and then later on home video. It kind of became a cult classic in home video. People really were digging it. And then that's where Pulp Fiction came from. And that's often the story of these directors. They have very little money and they do their first film, and it's kind of like audacious and garish. Like they overstep their bounds on what they should be able to do. And then when they get the money to make their second movie, a big movie, then they kind of have their hit, So like Christopher Nolan did Following. And then after he got a little bit of money and he had something to show people, then he made Memento. Or Guy Ritchie made Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and then he got the money and was able to make Snatch. You see that a lot with the directors. Here's a small amount of money. See what you can do with it. Okay, we trust you now. Here's, look at John Carpenter. He spent no money on Halloween and made $1 bajillion. And then later on, they're like, here, do The Thing, do whatever, So now here we cut back to present day, and we see Chris Penn driving down the street, explaining that the whole thing fell apart, and there's an orange balloon bouncing behind the car when we cut to this shot. That's obviously a tip-off of who the rat is, Mr. Orange. Oh, let's see here. I struggle to picture Mr. Blue. Oh, that's the same one. I still never seen Natural Born Killers, but True Romance definitely feels like an unofficial Tarantino movie. Yeah, I love True Romance very much. The dialogue is incredibly Tarantino. You feel like basically what happened is when Quentin Tarantino was working at a video store, this video archives place, he had an idea of what it'd be like to have a cool life and have a cool adventure and meet a cool girlfriend, because he's just some nerd. And he wrote this story. It's like a loose kind of what he wishes his autobiography was, and that's what True Romance is. The idea, a young man's idea of some adventure with a hot babe, But Reservoir Dogs is more of his 70s love. He grew up on these Jack Hill, Walter Hill, all these movies, the Hill Boys, these 70s film directors, a lot of the blaxploitation stuff, But yeah, I recommend Natural Born Killers is pretty good. It's definitely more Oliver Stone than it is Tarantino, but there's some incredibly memorable performances. Robert Downey Jr. is really good in it. Rodney Dangerfield is creepy as hell. I've never seen Rodney play a villain before, but he's great in it. Professor Macabro, greetings and salutations to the werecow. For those of you not familiar with my friend Professor, sometimes on our show Into House with my friend Horror Cat Dad, we'll just get off on weird tangents about movie ideas and stuff. And our friend Professor frequently turns them into movie trailers, and he does such a great job. They make me laugh every time. It's the best gift anybody could give me. So here the cops, they have the cop tied up in the chair, and everybody's kind of arguing about, were the police there? There was no alarm. Oh, let's see here. Greetings, Professor. Yeah, thank you for joining us. If anybody of you in the chat have never seen this, let me know. Or if where would you rank this? I would say out of my favorite Tarantinos, probably Pulp Fiction is first, and this might be second. True Romance might be in my favorite Tarantinos, even though he didn't direct it. Kill Bill 1 is pretty damn amazing. Inglourious Bastards is, every time I watch it, it gets better. That opening scene is just amazing. Kill Bill 2 it felt too long, or something. It felt like a different part of the journey. I don't know. The idea that Kill Bill 1 and 2 were a complete movie at one point kind of blows my mind. It feels like too big of an epic adventure. But From Dusk Till Dawn is also one of my favorite Tarantino movies, even though he didn't direct it. Tarantino's one of my favorite filmmakers, but he's not one of my favorite directors, even though he's very artsy and creative and he does a lot of clever things. I find a lot of his directing to be very 1970s-ish, like the framing of the shots and the color palettes and stuff, and the people all look sweaty. Still ironing out some final deals for the next trailer. Blind Furry. Oh, hell yes. Yeah, be sure to check out our friend Professor Macabro's page. He did a European or a European werecow and the other way around. No, a European werecow in Texas, or Texas werecow in Europe. So, God damn it, it's too late. But Blood Gobble had me cracking up, and then the European werecow in Canada. Is that what it is? Canadian werecow in Texas. God damn it, I'm fried. My favorite take channels are Kill Bill for the balls to the walls action and Glorious Bastards for the goddamn amazing dialogue. Yeah. I actually am a big fan of Death Proof. Just the premise of a movie where a guy is put out of the film business because of CGI, and then he goes crazy and then gets his revenge on women, and the movie itself has no CGI. It's like the movie itself is kind of feeding into the story. I don't know. The fact that everything was practical and those stunt women did all that stuff is so super cool. And the idea of like this, a horror movie about a guy killing people with a car is just very 1970s. It's, now everything's killing somebody with a knife or whatever, Yeah. I'm trying to think of the other Tarantino stuff I loved. Tarantino as a guy, the first time I saw him interviewed, I kind of related to him. He was kind of a dorky white kid who grew up around a lot of cool black people, and that aesthetic kind of just like melded with his nerdy white guyness. So it's a weird hybrid. And I often empathize with that. Like, I'm a fan of professional wrestling, and at least I used to be. I haven't watched it in years, but I listen to podcasts and stuff now. And the crossover of my friends is frequently professional wrestling. Like my black friends who like hip hop like professional wrestling, and my nerdy friends who like comic books and horror movies and stuff like professional wrestling. So it's like the bizarre influx, and that's where Tarantino lives, kind of in this 1 foot in each world kind of place. So now they're all leaving, and they're going to leave Mr. Blonde alone with this cop, and it gets bad. He's never done a poor or even mediocre film for me. The closest would be Kill Bill 2, but in my mind, it's part of a whole and not its own thing. Yeah, exactly. I'm a big fan of Tarantino's work. No matter what it is, I always enjoy it. Like I say, his directing isn't totally my preference. I'm more of a David Fincher guy, and if you compare a David Fincher movie to a Tarantino movie, they look worlds apart. Tarantino's very bright, Fincher's very dark. Like this shot right here, it's like this lime green pastel on the walls, and everything just looks dingy and lived in. And that's part of, I don't know, what Tarantino brings to the table. Pulp Fiction looks like a lived in world, even though it's fantastical at times. Oh, so I love this where he says, you can torture me all you want, but I don't know anything. And he's like, torture you? That's a good idea. There was this song called Scooby Snacks by this band, the Fun Lovin' Criminals. And it got real popular like in the late 90s, early thousands. And they used samples from this where he's like, torture you? That's a good idea. I think I'll do that. So yeah, it was like this kind of this rap rock alternative kind of song with like this funky backbeat, and then they just laid down a bunch of Tarantino tracks. It was almost like a half alternative, half club mix or something. So we're getting ready to come up to the ear cutting off scene. Michael Madsen's got the tape, and he's getting ready to tape his mouth up. Let me give you a time stamp. We're at 54:04. And he's getting ready to turn on the radio and play Stuck in the Middle with You. Let's see here. He didn't direct it, but I think he co-wrote it maybe from Dusk Till Dawn. Yeah. He actually, Tarantino played a great psychopath, which is kind of worrying. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, From Dusk Till Dawn is one of my faves. He wrote it, and then he was friends with the people from KNB, the Kurtzman and what's B? I forget already. uh, Kurtzman, Nicotero, and Berg, I think. Howard Berg, is that his name? Whatever, don't matter. But he was friends with the K&B people, who are mostly known for Walking Dead and a bunch of other special effects things. And Greg Nicotero's a director now too. And he worked out some sort of deal where, God, I can't remember what it was. He did some special effects work for him in exchange for the script for From Dusk Till Dawn. And then it sat and was never made. And then after Tarantino got big, that's when they came to him and was like, hey, do you want to do this? And he's like, heck yeah, let's rewrite it and get it going. And I thought Robert Rodriguez's version of a Quentin Tarantino movie is kind of awesome. From Dusk Till Dawn is like one of my favorites. So yeah, we're on the commercial break here. Looks like the minute commercial. But here's Bobby Portis from the local Milwaukee Bucks. So this must be a localized or a targeted commercial to me. That's kind of funny. Hey, did you see Thanksgiving yet? If so, thoughts? Yeah, I was kind of talking about that, Professor. I did watch Thanksgiving. I think we'll talk about it this Friday on Into House. But yeah, I have some various thoughts. It was enjoyable. I liked it, but it wasn't. It couldn't live up to the hype. When I saw Trick or Treat, the first time I saw it, I'd only heard like 2 people tell me it was good. So when I saw it, I loved it because I didn't have high expectations. Like, for example, I watched Thanksgiving, and when it was over, I was like, it was okay, but I was kind of in I was a little tired and had kind of a weird day, but I wanted something on, and I thought that might be cool and put me in a good mood, but it was all right. And then the next night I watched Five Nights at Freddy's, and I had 0 expectations of Five Nights at Freddy's. And it was kind of great. Like, I enjoyed it. Way spooky. It had like some like creepy ass stuff with kid abduction, like how the Black Phone did. And that's like an extra level of gross. So it felt way more mature than the usual PG-13 horror video game movie. Like, I thought Five Nights at Freddy was probably, I don't know, just as scary to me as Silent Hill or something. Although I think Silent Hill was R. So Michael Madsen's doing his dance. He's got out there. They're playing Stuck in the Middle with you, and he's got clowns to the left of him, jokers to the right. And he's got out this knife. And this is kind of an amazing scene because everybody remembers him cutting off this ear. But what they never remember is he leans in and he starts cutting the ear, and the camera pans off. And like this, they're completely off screen right now. We just hear the cops screaming, but we saw him lean in to cut the ear off. And we're just staring at a doorway right now. And then Michael Madsen walks into the frame and he's got the ear in his hand. So basically you just hand an actor a prop and then he acts like he freshly cut it off, but your mind makes the connection that you saw this act of violence that you never saw. Technically this is, if it wasn't for all the blood, this is probably a PG-13 scene. It's just implied violence. There's no actual visual violence. That part where he cuts him in the face is pretty violent. So I know people that swear in their life that they remember seeing Madsen chop off the ear on screen. Good timing, Professor. Yeah, exactly. Because that's powerful filmmaking. That shows you like just cutting film together. The Eisenstein, this Russian guy who basically invented how you cut film together. He figured all this out. You can take one image and marry it to another image that's never been connected, and suddenly you're telling a story. And that's what we did here. We saw a guy with a knife, and then we pan away and we hear screaming, and then we see a guy walk in with an ear, and people remember it for the rest of their lives that they saw a dude cut off another dude's ear. I love this. This is, we've talked about this before, the difference between soundtrack and diegenic, I think it's called, or diegetic music. If sometimes when a character is doing something, music will be playing in the background to accentuate the scene. It's part of the soundtrack. Sometimes when characters are doing something, there's music that goes along with the movie. That's the score. But the soundtrack is like actual music stuff you could put on an album and sell as the soundtrack, right? So there's a difference between soundtrack and score. But There's another thing called diegetic, I believe it's called, is the word, music. And what that means is instead of a character coming on and cool music playing behind them, we see somebody like turning on a radio or turning on a TV, or maybe somebody drives by playing music. And the music that's happening naturally within the scene accentuates what's going on and becomes like a natural soundtrack, like unintended. So like here, he turns on the radio and they play Stuck in the Middle with You, and he starts torturing this guy. And then he goes out to his car to get the gas can to come back and set him on fire. And when he leaves, we hear the music fade away as he walks to his car. And then as he walks back, we hear it fade back up. You know, we understand this is actual like happening. And there, when he's splashing the gasoline all over the cop, some of the gas gets on the camera lens, and we get like lens flares. And it's really kind of a cool shot. It bounces, you know, as far as the J.J. Abrams lens flare thing goes, it kind of bounces you out of the movie a little bit, but it is sort of pretty to see those little rainbow flashes pop on the screen. I love Thanksgiving. I almost struggled to get into Five Nights. See, I can totally understand that. My experience with Five Nights was, my niece was a big nerd, and it fascinated me that this horror movie game, or this horror game, got so popular that it became a line of kids' toys. Like, that's never happened. Well, I take that back. Freddy was supposed to be horrible, and then he later on became like kid friendly almost. Little kids would go as Freddy for Halloween and stuff. So the Five Nights at Freddy's becoming like this phenomenon among children fascinated me. It's like, why the hell are y'all into this all of a sudden? So I liked Willy's Wonderland when I watched it, and that was kind of an early Five Nights at Freddy's movie. And I kind of wanted to see Five Nights. It was on Prime for free, so I watched it. And even though it was supposed to have commercials, it didn't. I don't know why. So there, Mr. Blonde is going to set Marvin Nash, the cop, on fire, and he gets shot. Mr. Blonde gets shot, and we realize it's Mr. Orange. He woke up long enough from being passed out to shoot him and save him. And Mr. Orange reveals himself to be an undercover cop. That ear scene was infamous at the time, but nowadays people would barely think anything of it. Yeah. I think on a violence level, it's very shocking, and I think just the disrespect of the law and all that stuff, but it really makes you feel like these villains are villains, and the whole thing with Mr. Blonde kind of explaining like he has a set of morality, like he hates the cops, and he's an outright villain, but he's also kind of a good guy. I don't know. It's hard to explain. There apparently was supposed to be a Vega Brothers movie with Michael Madsen. I believe his last name is Vic Vega. And then Vincent Vega was John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. So there was a point, apparently they were going to make a Vega Brothers movie, Michael Madsen and John Travolta. But, obviously Tarantino's only made 10 films, so he wasn't going to get around to some side project like that. But that's the type of thing I wish they'd make graphic novels for or something. I'd read that. Trick shot. Here we see the head of the cop on one side of the screen, and it's like real close up. And then in the background over here, we see Mr. Orange. But if you look real closely in the shot, we're at the 102:30 mark. If you look in between them, there's like this blurry line right here in the middle of the screen. And that's because he's using a split screen diopter, it's called, another 10-cent word. Basically what they do is they shoot a split screen shot and then marry the two together, but it looks like it's all one shot. They do it in horror movies a lot where people like hide behind a door, and then we look through the hallway. They usually cut the frame in the door. The giveaway is that the character close to the screen will have blur behind them, but the character in the back will be crystal clear. It's like, well, where did the blur go? Brian De Palma uses it all the time. Tarantino's a huge Brian De Palma fan. A lot of the stuff he mimics is De Palma. Split screen diopter, the same one they use in Jaws. Look at Professor, he gets it. There's a man who listens to commentaries like I do. Before there were podcasts, like in the late 90s, early thousands, before the podcast thing became available, the director commentary was like my jam for podcasts. Like whenever I was doing stuff around the house and I didn't have time to sit and watch the movie, I would put on, a director's commentary and just listen to them explain their process and their thoughts and any technical stuff I could pick up. It was like one of the best ways to learn about movies ever. So now here we see Mr. Orange's story, the title card. And he walks into this diner, and they basically break down how he's going to get in and infiltrate him. The motherfucker looks like the Thing, flame on and all that shit, invisible bitch. And this appears to be the same diner as the one in Pulp Fiction, the Honey Bunny diner at the beginning and end of Pulp Fiction. You can see the rocks on the walls and stuff. Yeah, there's the wooden booth dividers, the like little banisters that divide them. Yeah, it's the same diner. Yeah, here's the part where he's explaining, and then we meet Joe, and he gives me a name, Mr. Orange. He's like, okay, Mr. Orange. I love this part where he's like, the commode story. And then within the commode story, he's like, you got to tell it so many times that eventually you make it your own, right? Like you tell this lie over and over and over again, so it feels like it really happened to you. And he's like, did the bathroom stink? Yada, yada, whatever. So one of the little inflections he throws in when he's telling the commode story is how he was selling weed, and he had this hookup on weed and all this. And he was getting annoyed at all these cheap like weed heads calling late at night, trying to get small amounts while he's like, fuck man, I'm trying to watch the Lost Boys. And that's always just like a funny throwaway line to me. Like, just like, man, I'm trying to do things like watch the Lost Boys. It's your little 10-cent bag, your little $10 bag ain't mean anything to me, man. And then I like this part too, where he's like, the reason I'm in is because of Long Beach Mike. And he's like, they wouldn't have trusted me without Long Beach Mike verifying. And the other dude steps in. He's like, Long Beach Mike is a informant and a junkie. Don't be acting like he's some hero. So they build this whole mythos for a character we never meet. He's got like his own little 2-second story and everything. They explain how the cops feel about the informants, like how they need them, but they kind of dislike them and hate them. Such a good movie. It's all built on dialogue. It's just the strength of people talking to each other and us overhearing their conversations. Yeah, here he's explaining to him how this is another thing that happens too. These two guys are discussing the commode story, and the one cop gives him the script to memorize, and they're up on a roof. And lots of times in movies, the characters go up on roofs to talk. Like nobody in real life, like how many conversations you ever had on a roof? You know what I mean? Like, unless you're up there repairing the roof and you're like, hey, hand me that hammer. Not a lot of conversations go up on a roof. I mean, I don't live in New York or any of these places that are congested where folks go up to their roofs and, raise pigeons and suntan and sit in the little blow up pool like in Weekend at Bernie's, but one of the things they tell you about filmmaking, like in film school and stuff, is that you want to open things up for scope. So if you got two characters talking to each other like 2 seconds ago, they're both just sitting in a booth in a diner, just face, both on this side talking to each other. It's a very boring shot where there's no real cuts. We don't cut back and forth from face to face very much or nothing. So like characters sitting in a car talking or characters sitting in a living room talking, it's just boring. So instead, have that conversation on a roller coaster. And that's what they do in True Romance. They have a conversation on a roller coaster. Here, they're having a conversation on a roof, because anytime the conversation gets boring, we can look off into the background and see a skyline. It's just a cheap trick to like add something visually interesting instead of just two people sitting in a room talking, as I'm just a person sitting in a room talking. Oh, let's see. The thing about the commode story is, since he has limited ability to go off script, and one of the crooks jumps in and asks him a question about the story. Yeah, well, like that's kind of what they're talking about. Like he's realizing that to do this undercover job, he has to be like this great, actor. And he's like, I'm not an actor. Probably started off as a boy in blue and worked my way up to this undercover gig, probably by a couple drug busts or being in the narco squad or whatever. But here he is infiltrating these diamond heisters, hustlers, hustlers. I always assumed they talked on the roof because the wind would muffle wires or listening devices. um, yeah, like what do you call it? Another one is The Room, Tommy Wiseau. They just often like to go up to roofs. Like a lot of New York movies take place on roofs, but like I say, a lot of stuff happens on roofs in New York. But there's no reason for you to be on the roof in Los Angeles. What if an earthquake happens? And this is a dope shot too. He goes and performs the commode story, and he stands in front of this like just graffitied up wall. So it's like this beautiful stage that he's on. It's like a loading docks, and it really does perform like he's giving a monologue in a stage play or something. But it's this graffiti wall behind him, so it's super dirty. It feels like something out of the Warriors. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes when they like, I see what you're talking about, Professor. Like when two criminals are planning stuff, it's best to go up where it's muffled or windy or someplace where it's loud. Um, a lot of times characters will whisper real close, or in what's it in Goodfellas, like where they don't use the phones and stuff, so they only speak to each other right up in each other's ear. Yeah, so here he's explaining the commode story, and he's kind of vamping and going through it. And you can see Harvey Keitel, nice guy Eddie, and Joe Cabot just like sitting there staring at him, like trying to like size him up, feel like if he feels like a real criminal or if he's just faking it. Tim Roth's accent's pretty good in this. Some of his movies, he slips. You can hear the British, but in this, I find he's pretty solid all the way through. I In a screenplay I wrote one time, I had this great idea where the one character was explaining a story kind of like this. And then as he was explaining the visual portrayal of the story, he was like playing each one of the characters. Like he was, we would cut to the boss, and then he would be dressed as the boss. And, then we would cut to the secretary, and then the main character explaining it would be portraying the secretary and stuff. And after I read it, I was so impressed with myself. Like, I'm just the smartest person ever. And then I realized that they do that in the commode store. Like they jump around and have like Tim Roth and various, they don't have him like I wanted him, where like Tim Roth would actually be in like a sheriff's outfit. And like here, he's explaining his story, and we cut from Joe Cabot and them listening to just the gang of sheriffs listening. It's like this surrealistic, you can tell it's all bullshit. It is 4:05 a.m. on Central Time. There is, it's going to be 17 minutes left. It's going to be right down to the wire. Like I said, my prediction was that this would wrap up at 4:20 a.m. my time, and that if I started at one point, it would fade out where my American friends were falling asleep, and then it would start where my UK friends are waking up. So keep an eye out for the British invasion at any point. Um, I love this part where these cops are talking, and the one with the mustache is like, this real sexy Asian chick. And I say, buddy, if you don't put that down, I'm going to shoot you in the face. Like the way he says face, that line reading, it's like, this dude needed an Oscar. Buddy, I'm going to shoot you in the face. Yeah, this real sexy Asian bitch. She's staring at him. Like this, they make the cops look like such assholes. And I love that the German Shepherd is like staring him down. They do a real good job of paranoia. A lot of this is Brian De Palma stuff, like the angles and the way the stuff in the background, the people are like staring at the main character, so there's a sense of like being watched. Such a good movie. 4:05. Damn, Don, you really do burn the midnight oil. Yeah. Today I was up late last night getting stuff finished. I had a few things I needed to work on. And then today I had a thing around 10 a.m. So I woke up early, went and did that, came back and went to sleep like most of the afternoon. And then I woke up and talked to Larry about doing Into House. And that's when he had kind of informed me everything that had been going on with Dave over the last couple of days. I haven't been on social media because I had some other stuff going on. So this afternoon is when we figured it all out that we weren't going to be doing a show. So about the time that JT's live stream discussing the situation with Dave went off, I just started drinking beers and partaking in the devil's lettuce. And after a great deal of time invested in that, I realized it was like, nope, I'm still not falling asleep. And I'm not even faded after 2 blunts, a joint, 2 bowls, a whole vape pen, and 5 beers. It's one of the problems with being a giant. It's really hard to sedate. Self-medicating isn't as easy for me as it should be, damn it. Pop shit. Pop quiz, hot shots. Best crime movie of these 3: Reservoir Dogs, Snatch, or Heat? Oh, dear Lord, that's really tough. I would say the key word would be crime. So the best crime movie of these is Heat, because the heist, the bank heist and the shootout and the planning and the way the characters then afterwards, like, have their inner problems and fight and stuff. I think that's much more of a crime movie, especially because it tells the cops and you got De Niro and Pacino and all that. As we're Snatch and Reservoir Dogs, Snatch I love so much, like in many ways, but basically it's derivative of Tarantino's work. Like I think there wouldn't be a Guy Ritchie without a Tarantino, and there wouldn't be a Tarantino without a Scorsese. So I would have to say my favorite crime movie of those 3 is probably Heat, just because of the actual crime. But as far as like the dialogue or enjoyability or rewatchability, I actually would rewatch Reservoir Dogs or Snatch. I'd probably go Snatch, Reservoir Dogs, Heat as far as rewatchability. But for crime, it would probably be Heat, Reservoir Dogs, Snatch. Snatch almost feels like a comedy to me more than a crime drama. I mean, I know it's about gangsters and just villainous people doing villainous stuff, but Heat feels like a real heist movie, Midnight Woodman also says Heat. What is yours, Professor? You asked the question. You get to answer too. And those of you listening to the replay or listening to the podcast version of this show, feel free to put in the comments which of those 3 you would choose as the best crime movie. Hopefully my methodology made sense to everybody. There's another awesome subtle scene. He's getting ready to go be with the bad guys, Tim Roth. And he stops in the mirror and he's like, "You're badass, you're Serpico." He's like getting in his own head the way an athlete would. He's trying to psych himself up and invent a character to go be. And he pours out this little like coffee tin of change and just kind of rifles through it with his fingers and takes out what appears to be a wedding ring and puts it on. Like the character is basically telling us if he wants to die, he wants to, die with his wedding ring on because he loves his wife. So here we're seeing the people who are staking out Mr. Orange, or like the backup for Mr. Orange, watching, and it's the same exact shot from Pulp Fiction where Bruce Willis is driving the Honda. I had to crash that Honda, baby. And Ving Rhames crosses the street, and Ving Rhames like stops and looks into the car, and he says, "Motherfucker." This is that same kind of shot. It's like through the windows, and you can see the actual I don't know, supports on the windshield. Least favorite Tarantino. That's tough. Probably Kill Bill 2. I don't know. Let me double check again. Make sure I'm not missing nothing. Yeah, I actually really enjoy Hateful Eight more than most people do. So I'll probably say Kill Bill 2 is my least favorite. Um, and Jackie Brown is very underrated. Jackie Brown's just a really solid, like, crime drama thriller. I enjoy Jackie Brown a lot. Um, so yeah, I would probably say that. I know a lot of folks would argue Death Proof is probably his worst, but like I said, I have kind of special feelings about Death Proof. I think he does. Death Proof has one of the first text love scenes in a movie. Like, it's the first time I ever saw two characters texting romance to each other. As like in real life, you do text each other. You know, that's how out of most relationships get started these days, is through a text relationship. So where Jungle Julia is on the phone texting with the boy she likes or whatever, like, that's the first time I ever saw that. I thought it was kind of groundbreaking for a throwback movie. Um, Hateful Eight is highly rewatchable. I think there's stuff in the subtext there about like racism in America and a bunch of other stuff that just really goes untapped. But it's really more of an Agatha Christie movie. You know, it's, we got 8 people and they just keep getting picked off. You know, the 10 Little Indians or whatever. Kill Bill 1 is just an action masterpiece. Inglorious Bastards is like Brad Pitt says at the end, hell, this just might be my masterpiece. Django might be my least favorite, actually, now that I think about it. No, I'd watch Django before Kill Bill Volume 2. Django is basically a slavery revenge fantasy. It's like, you know, nobody who hears about slavery has good thoughts about it. So it's like, let's make a movie where people get back at them crackers for slavery. Here's another famous part where they ride around in the car and they're talking about the guy who gets his junk glued to his stomach. And then they're trying to like discern the difference between Pam Grier and Honey West. You're under arrest, sugar. But they're doing like the one of the things that's really great about this movie is it's a lot like Dazed and Confused. It's a hangout movie. Like, we're hanging out with these folks who we like. You know, these guys are kind of cool. They're all vile criminals and they're terrible. They all need to be in jail. But they're fun dudes. Like, if they were your pals, it's like, I like them. If I could just get them on the straight and narrow, you know. But I don't know. Put your least favorite Tarantino in the chat or the comments. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Kill Bill 2 and then Django second to last, I guess. Django and Death Proof are right there. They're kind of neck and neck, but Jackie Brown is far superior. So I'm fascinated as to what reasons that Joe apparently wasn't 100% on Orange. Is that because he hadn't worked with him before? Because his acting wasn't all that convincing? Yeah, I mean, he could have given himself away with the commode story. I think at one point, doesn't he say, like, if you're not 100% sure, you know, everybody else he knew from other jobs and had verified that they were actual criminals. This was the only guy who was a referral from, what's his name? Long Beach Mike. So here's the part where they give each other the names. And we just kind of like, yeah, it feels like the first day of school. Like, everybody's just kind of in their little seats and we get a look at their faces and they're all assigned their names. Interesting. What the heck ever did happen with Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character in Death Proof? They just left her behind and she was never referenced again. Yeah, the cheerleader, is that who she was? Yeah, like they used her to take the car, and then she's, I don't know, maybe she's in part of that X Pearl trilogy or whatever. Like, she's out there in the cheerleader outfit with some farm guy. I don't know. But that is funny. They never really do bring it up again. The movie ends on them stomping in old buddy's face. I like to think the other girls just picked her up on the way home, Professor. Yeah, that is probably true. They stomped in old buddy's face, and then they all got in the car and drove back and picked her up. And then they explained what a wacky day it had been. Mr. Pink sounds like Mr. Pussy. How about if I'm Mr. Purple? I'll be Mr. Purple. You're not Mr. Purple. Some other guy on another job is Mr. Purple. You're Mr. Pink. This actor, Joe Cabot, this is Lawrence Tierney. He was in a bunch of movies in like the 50s and 60s, and he's like just a crazy, wild old man, like mean as hell. I know him from Silver Bullet. He's like the guy that owns the bar with the baseball bat. Um, Apparently, Tarantino and Joe Cabot or Lawrence Tierney got into a fight on set. Like Tarantino's trying to direct him, and Lawrence Tierney's like, "I've been in 60 movies. You're making your first film. Leave me alone, you punk." And I think at one point they had to be pulled apart physically. And Tarantino told him, "I will kick your old ass." So I always think that whenever I see Joe Cabot, I kind of smile. Like he seems like a feisty fella. I get so upset yelling at you boys, I can't even hardly talk. Well, I've never noticed this before. When they're breaking down what everybody's going to do in the heist, they use black and white still shots for like a little slideshow real quick. And then they cut to the scene where Mr. Orange and Mr. White are sitting in the car talking, and he's like, that security guard put a gun on him. He's like, that girl's butt. He's like, right here on my dick. And he's like, okay, let's go get a taco. I say that all the time. All right, good. Let's go get a taco. And the great part is, even if people have never seen Reservoir Dogs, everybody's always like, okay, yeah, let's go get a taco. I'm totally down. Nobody ever turns down the let's go get a taco command. The editing Kill Bill felt off. The battle with the Crazy 88 should have been in volume 2 and then have the Bill scene take place after the breather, after all that carnage and bloodshed. I do agree. That's one of the issues with Kill Bill 2 is Kill Bill 1 with the House of Fallen, was it House of Blue Leaves or whatever it is? That main scene at the end with the Crazy 88s, that feels like such a crescendo that it should have been in part. Yeah, that should have wrapped up. But the movie itself is, the bride is ultimately a mother, and it has to delve into her motherhood and rebuilding her family. And basically, by killing Bill, she kills the patriarchy. It's the beautiful thing about these intellectual writers. They give you a surface level story, but then there's like the artsy story too. It's like the popcorn eating fan can enjoy it, and the snooty, intellectual can kind of like, well, I think. So, sorry, they just crashed the car. It's the Tarantino's scene where he's got like the bloody forehead and he's like clearly concussed and he's trying to drive the car even though he's out of it. Like, that's all really smart. That feels real. And then Harvey Keitel does the badass thing where he pulls out the 2 guns and he just shoots at the cops. Bah, 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 bah. So wild. Yeah, Professor, I agree, though. The pacing of Kill Bill 1 and 2 is very strange. The House of Blue Leaves or whatever plays to such a big, operatic conclusion that by the time we get to the sunrise beach fight with or supposedly they're supposed to have, and it ends up just being a shootout, the same old Tarantino Mexican Standoff. I couldn't believe I couldn't remember Mexican Standoff, and the professor is in the damn chat. That's what happens. Hey, 420. So we are, how much left? 14 minutes left. That's what I get for commercials and pausing. Another lens flare. People don't think of Tarantino as a lens flare director, but yeah, they're all over the place in his stuff. Video Tasties, there he is. Morning. We were predicting that you would turn up in this stream, Gareth. So thank you for showing. As per usual, drink anytime I mention Gareth or the podcast audience. Oh, there's an awesome scene. They go to carjack this lady like Grand Theft Auto style, and she pulls out a pistol, and then Tim Roth has to shoot a civilian. And like, that's obviously not part of the purview of his job. But he's like so in deep in this like undercover cop life that he even falls into the trap of basically being a criminal himself. Hey, Sean's been here the whole time. I always wondered who that extra person was that wasn't commenting. It was Sean. Thanks for hanging out, Sean. I didn't know you were still here. Morning, Gareth. Yeah, everybody loves Video Tasties. I was watching VT last night. Like I said, there's so much going on and hard to focus and stuff. So just hanging out with friends, it was very peaceful and nice. And uh, Gareth did a watch along of what's it, The Long Friday, I believe it's called, Bob Hoskins crime drama. And I was listening to it. I'd never seen the movie, but hearing Gareth talk about it kind of put me at peace. Get Carter out of those. I would say best old school crime drama or crime movie: Get Carter, The French Connection, or Mean Streets. I'm a Mean Streets guy. I imagine I haven't seen The French Connection in so long, but I didn't like it as much as the rest of the world did. Like I thought Popeye Doyle was an interesting character. He was kind of an ass. The original Get Carter with Michael Caine is really good, but the problem is I saw the Stallone version first. So I actually kind of like think of the Stallone version as Get Carter, not the Michael Caine version. I know I'm very embarrassed. You can see me like trying to hide my face while I say this. But I later went back and watched the Michael Caine Get Carter, and just, it wasn't as exciting as if I had seen it fresh, But then Mean Streets, I'm a Scorsese fan, obviously, and Casino and Goodfellas are like two of my favorite movies of all time. I've seen them so much. So I went back and watched a bunch of the Scorseses, and when I watched Mean Streets, I really felt like Mean Streets is Scorsese's Reservoir Dogs. It's like he didn't have the money. It's a less polish, more like a grungy sort of garage band version of a movie. And then later on, he moves into the big, glossy, beautiful productions. Christopher Penn just killing his scene here with the big, wide, crazy eyes. And he's got the little splatters of blood on his face and stuff. And he comes off like a cold-blooded psychopath, even though the whole movie's just been kind of like a chubby, kind of cuddly, son of the boss kind of guy. Like you feel like he's probably murdered many people that we never saw. Let's see here. Hi, Cinephile. Morning. Midnight Woman says, Woodsman says, Get Carter out of those. Yeah, I was going to say, I would go Mean Streets, Get Carter, French Connection. But if you told me French Connection, Mean Streets, Get Carter, I couldn't blame you. Now let's see how many we got. 1, 2, 3. Facing this way, we got 3 uncovered coffins. But I think when we cut back the other way, we can see a 4th one. Because now we've seen that Tarantino is gone, as Mr. Pink and Mr. Brown and Mr. Blue are both gone. And Mr. Blonde has already been shot. So there's 3. I remember I bought around the time Pulp Fiction came out, they released a double CD collection with like the hits of Tarantino soundtracks, and it was the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack and the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. And that was my first year going to college, and I lived 2 hours away from home. So whenever I had to go home, those 2 discs would be in rotation there and back. Like you could put that on and just run through the whole soundtrack of this and the whole soundtrack of Pulp Fiction. Very few skips in that. So here we're breaking out into the Mexican Standoff. We got Harvey Keitel, Joe Cabot, and Nice Guy Eddie are all pointing at each other, got the gun. Meanwhile, Tim Roth is just on the floor writhing around, and it's a big puddle of like grotesquely red blood. But yeah, this becomes a staple in Tarantino movies, the Mexican Standoff. Is that racist? Every time I say it, I feel weird. But it's from the old cowboy movies, and in particular, I think Sam Peckinpah, maybe, where basically you have multiple characters pointing guns at each other, and if one person shoots, everybody shoot. So it's like a mutually assured destruction with like nuclear war or whatever. Are you fucking kidding me? Okay, so they all shot each other, spoiler alert, and everybody gets filled with bullets and collapses, and we go to a commercial, and there's friggin' Bobby Portis shooting jumpers. Everybody's laying there. We don't know that everybody died, and they went to a commercial. Like, I don't know if they planned it that way. Like, that was, you can see I'm somewhat shaken from the whole ordeal. How dare they go to a commercial with like 1 minute left in the movie? Yeah, get on with it, Bobby Portis. We get it. You guys are going to get beat in the playoffs anyways. And it's the long commercial, too. It's the minute-long one. Oh, dear Lord, Tubi. How are you going to Tubi like this? Oh, no. I'm in such suspense, even though I've seen this movie 50 times. I had the VHS of this. I think I mentioned earlier the four versions of the color-coded Mr. Yellow, Mr. Pink, Mr. White, and Mr. Brown, I think. I think they make a Tarantino one. But then I also had the metal gas can version, and then I had the Blu-ray. So yeah, this is one. All my favorite movies I end up owning on like all the formats. Thank you. Commercial over. Geez, you know how hard it was to vamp? There's still 6 minutes left. So now here they're I love this. Everybody gets shot and is laying there on the ground in puddles of blood, and the cop, Marvin Nash, is tied to the chair, and he's face down. It feels like the end of a play almost. And then Buscemi comes out from underneath the loading dock, and you see that he's fine. And he snatches up the satchel of diamonds and runs away like kind of a little sniveling coward. And if you listen real closely in the soundtrack, you can hear cops outside like saying, "Hey, you freeze!" So you're supposed to assume that Buscemi got killed there. But there's other people who think that he's the only one who lived. So I guess your interpretation of how the film ends depends a lot on how good the sound clarity of your TV or sound system is. But then it ends with both Keitel and Roth covered in blood. And like, we go back to that part where he's like a father figure or like an older brother figure to him. And he goes to comfort him, but he realizes, like, you're the rat. As far as a movie about a rat goes, this is way better than The Departed. How's that for a question? Better rat movie. This, The Departed, or Deep Cover with Lawrence Fishburne. There, that's the same question a professor would ask me. Let's see here. What's your thought on the ending? Do you think Buscemi got away? Professor always is right with me. He asks the questions right after I answer him. You're perfect. Don't you ever change. You're beautiful to me. Yeah, I personally don't think he got away. I think they all die. I think this is like I say, almost like an Agatha Christie movie, the same way as Hateful Eight. We have all these characters, and they just slowly get picked off one by one by one by one. So yeah, if you listen real closely as Buscemi runs away, you can hear the cop sirens pulling up, and they shoot at him. I always assume he gets shot. Maybe he got away from the bullets. But yeah, there's this scene now where Tim Roth is laying on Harvey Keitel's lap, and they're both just covered in blood and sweat, and they're crying. And he explains to him, "I'm a cop." And then Keitel realizes that he's, protected this guy who's betrayed him. He did the wrong thing by doing the right thing. And he realizes all this couldn't have been avoided if he just would have believed that this dude really was a cop. And we see the gun go to his head, and that's how it ends. Such a crazy, it's almost like Kurosawa type filmmaking. Like the lesson and the way the characters build into each other and the way they play to the ending is just, I'm sorry, Larry. And then we end on Keitel's face, like with his tears and snot. His face is all red and his hair is all messed up. And then the cops bust in and tell him to drop the gun or they're going to blow him away. And we hear one shot go off, and all the other gunshots go off. And we cut to written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. Oh, now we get to play my favorite game, the also recommended. Number one also recommended was Suicide Kings. Second was American Me. If you've never seen American Me, it's pretty good. Edward James Olmos in this like prison crime drama about Latino gangs. It's pretty dope. Boondock Saints, of course. Boondock Saints is incredibly derivative of Tarantino. Like there would be no Boondock Saints without Tarantino. Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. That's a Kiefer Sutherland crime drama movie, as I recall. Payback with Mel Gibson. Platoon. Hannibal. Out of the Furnace. Way of the Gun. Way of the Gun, maybe. That's a very Tarantino-esque kind of crime drama thing about, I don't know, more of a character study than it is a crime deal, but pretty good. But anyways, that was Reservoir Dogs, directed by Quentin Tarantino, his first feature film. I'm a fan. I saw it first on VHS at Blockbuster. My mom went and got a stack of movies, the usual 3 for the weekend, and she brought them home, and you put them on top of the TV next to the VCR. And a movie called Reservoir Dogs did not sound good to me at all. She's like, I think it's a crime drama. I was like, it sounds like it sucks. And that's one of the things I don't like the name Reservoir Dogs. I get what it means. It's the dogs that live in the reservoir in LA, the toughest ones. It's like, the homeless dogs that drink water out of the water reservoirs, like in Terminator 2, when they're jumping in the motorcycle and the truck and those things. Those are the reservoirs. So Reservoir Dogs are basically stray dogs that live in the reservoirs. They're extra tough. But that's just a terrible name because they don't mention it in the movie at all. There's never any reference to it. No one explains, you know what you are? You're a reservoir dog. So it's I don't know. The name doesn't suit me. Pulp Fiction makes sense because it's supposed to be like a Pulp Fiction novel, but Reservoir Dogs is a very sketchy name. But I loved it the first time I saw it. I thought it was crazy and inventive and just grossly bloody for a crime drama. Like when you compare the blood in this to the blood in Heat, this is damn near a horror movie. But yeah, definitely one of my comfort film movies, one of my all-time faves. With all that's going on, I just felt like hanging out with you guys late tonight. And if you're listening to this in a replay, I appreciate you checking it out. I appreciate all of you in the chat who hung out. Professor Macabro, Mikey's More, Cinephile Sanity, have Cheetah will view. I always want to call it Have Cheetah Will Interview because he changed it for a minute. Have Cheetah Will View, our buddy Patrick, Professor Macabro, like I said, Mayanne dropped in for a little bit, just the usual folks. Midnight Woodsman, I appreciate you being here, buddy. That's the first time I think you've hung out for one of these, and you were here the whole time, and you had a bunch to contribute. You please hang out in the future. You're good people. Speaking of that, Midnight Woodsman said, I would have had Pink be opportunistic and kill either Joe or Nice Guy. It feels a stretch to me that White could kill 2 by himself. Yeah, the math of the triangle is screwy in this Mexican Standoff. It didn't even occur to me that Pink got caught until about the 3rd time I saw the film. Yeah, I always thought that was part of the joke, is that he was like this kind of sniveling Ratso Rizzo character who slinks away at the end, the only one who got away because he wasn't a total villain. There was some redeeming aspects to the dude, and he got away. The original Internal Affairs is better than The Departed. I've never seen Internal Affairs. I've always wanted to. I like The Departed well enough. I need to rewatch it. It's probably been 5 years or 10 years since I've seen it, but it was one of those that was on cable so many times I ended up catching it in bits and pieces, and I had the double disc. The Departed double disc comes with a documentary like Martin Scorsese, My Life in Films or something, and it's like a cool documentary about him as a filmmaker. Really awesome little extra movie. The way From Dusk Till Dawn comes with Full Tilt Boogie. That's kind of how that little movie length documentary on The Departed is, at least the special edition one. I don't know. I think there's probably several versions of The Departed. Video Tasties gives us the big pink heart. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you being here a lot. With the situation of all this going on, I just kind of wanted to. I knew I was going to be laying awake, and hanging out with my friends seemed like a nice thing to do right now. So, you certainly are my friend, and all of you in the chat are my friends, and all of you listening along later on are my friend. And I'm lucky to have such good friends, and I appreciate you all very much. So since it's 4:36 in the morning Central Time, I will wish all of you green grass and high tides forever, and have a good weekend, my friends. I appreciate you a great deal. Good day.